Okay, so I'm Shirley Spreeth and I work with the Sabi Valley Conservancy and I do the social media and marketing. And with me today I have Rob Beverly and Penny Havnar, and they're just going to be talking through a few of their involvement with the Sabi Valley Conservancy, but back in the day. So Rob is very much into the cattle side. So Rob, please go through for the followers what it was like being a cattle rancher in your day.
All right, to start off with, initially the southeastern lowveld was not looked upon as a worthwhile proposition for any form of agriculture, particularly cattle. Wildlife had absolutely no value those days at all, and the only thing that would have been able to be established was cattle, which is what the first people that went down there got involved in. And the bridges, Lucas and Despard bridges from Argentina were the first two ever white commercial farmers to come into the lowveld and establish. They established what became known as Beverly Ranch, which ultimately ended up as the Sabi Valley the main part of the Sabi Valley Conservancy about 60, 70 years later, having produced cattle for 60 or 70 years. Because, as I said, initially there was no value on game and there was no marketing or anything that would make it a viable proposition. It's not a good cropping area because the rains are very erratic, which is another one of the problems. And it's a semi-arid area that Beverly was established in. The year that the bridges came was 1918. That's the first white commercial farmers. There were Shangaan people there, but they were very scattered, very isolated. One of the other diseases was foot and mouth, was a critical problem because both wildlife and cattle are carriers of foot and mouth, on and off, which science only discovered years later. We had a hard time as cattlemen trying to overcome that as a problem. And the other major problem was the predators. There were huge populations of predators like lions, where they had to, unfortunately, cull them to be able to run a cattle enterprise. When the bridges were there, they were followed a number of years later by other because they had established themselves, other commercial cattlemen decided that they could also make a go of it, and a handful went down to try and do something about it. But between foot and mouth and the predators, most of them did not win, and they were seriously affected financially and packed up and left.
So Rob, could I ask, you did a number of research on your own into the foot and mouth to help with your own cattle. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, to briefly go into that, when the first ever outbreak was on the eastern side of our area, and that was about 1910 or 1918, 1920, and they had absolutely, veterinary department, it's not their fault, had no concept of an outbreak of foot and mouth like that. What people don't understand, that there are certain carriers in cattle, in wildlife, and things like pig. It's a cloven-hoofed disease, and it's a virus, and it spreads very, very quickly. What it does when it gets serious, the serious outbreaks of the same type, there are three types of foot and mouth in Africa, SAT, South African type 1, 2, and 3. We got SAT2. And like flu, some years the outbreak was serious, other years it just blows through. And you see game standing there with all their hooves lost and cattle with their tongues swollen up, unable to eat and drink and walk. So we had to destroy them. And those days we were put into quarantine as cattlemen for over a year. So the economics of cattle production were very critical, very critical, and that's why a lot of the original cattlemen actually packed up and pushed off.
And then I suppose the 92 drought also
Then when we got to the 92 drought, what basically happened is, I believe everything got hammered. There's no ways that cattle were more hammered than wildlife. They were suffering from the same consequences of that drought. I know that there'll be argument about this, it's not my problem. But when one considers the alternatives of trying to keep cattle there, there was no choice. You either sold them for nothing or let them die. So most of the cattle died, and a vast number of wildlife. I went down, for instance, down to Gonorrhea. Sally and I went down there the one day just to actually have a look how bad it was. And I was so devastated and heartbroken, I actually couldn't, I put my foot down and I came roaring out of Gonorrhea.
So I